Hello, Gino here, and you are listening to Otherworld Connections. We live in a critical time where now, more than ever, angels and fairies, hidden forces, are bursting at the seams of the veil to work with us. They want to see us change in order to save the world and live in service to others. So join me on a journey to empowerment and enlightenment with an angelic angle and a fairy focus, looking into ways to improve our current situation, morality, archetypes, solutions for self-healing, and spiritual sciences in light of theosophy and other occult traditions.
Hello! Otherworld Connections, Gino here. And I have my puppy, my black Labrador Ernie, with me in this tiny little room. So there's going to be a bit of distracting noise in the background. I've given him a dried beef trachea, 100% natural. He's on an all-raw diet. Lucky boy. And as the saying goes, he eats better than I do. So yeah, there's going to be crunching and munching in the background, and hopefully that lasts him the full hour. It's looking pretty good. Sometimes the poor moo cow that the trachea came from is a bit thin on it, and that treat does not last very long, but that one might go the distance. Today's show, I'm going to read you a fairy tale, and no, this is not the Secret Kindergarten, but fairy tales are important, and we're going to explore that. Today we're going to read and explore the Three Clever Kings by Mary de Morgan, and that was written that was published in 1886. We're going to have a message from our traveling companions, the angels out there, and we're going to talk about thought forms in our hive mind segment. And got a few minutes before I kick off, so I'm going to talk about the moral of the story, a moral of a story. Yesterday, there was a car outside, across the road from the entrance to our property, and they couldn't start the car. And I heard this noise, and it was ongoing, and I went to check it out, and it was, not very healthy sounding car trying to start. So, the car looked... It was a pretty gangster car. It was run down, and it was like, I was thinking, I don't know. So already, I feel like it's already moral conundrum. I have this thing, like helping people, right? You don't want to be really the guy that brings the acoustic guitar to the party when no one wanted to hear you play, right? It's good to bring the guitar, but to go and strum it in everybody's faces when they're trying to listen to some, I don't know, techno music, I don't know. That's not very helpful, right? So I'm like, right, I'm not going to overthink this. It's good to help people when they're in trouble. And so I just went over and said, hey, what's up? And, maybe... Maybe I should have listened to that down in my mind, but it wasn't actually that bad. But they really did not want white boy Gino coming over to say, hi guys, how are you today? Yeah, they reluctantly engaged with me, and one of them was polite. The other two guys was basically hostile. I thought I was going to help them and then have to fight them. So they thought they'd run out of petrol, and I was like, I've got a bit of petrol, I can give you some. So I went into the garage and got, luckily had just like the perfect amount where it wasn't overly helpful, and it was probably enough just to get them out of a pickle. It was probably like a pint. About 500 mils of petrol. And I put it in, and man, it was uncomfortable, and I made a joke. I said, I'm qualified to work at the petrol station now. And they did not like that. And I thought things were going to kick off for a sec. So the point of my story is helping people, right? They didn't really ask for it. I offered it. I didn't just automatically help them, but they needed help. They needed something, and they were stuck in a loop of trying to get the car started. And they were actually out there for a long time. I was busy. I heard the noise, and I went to check out the noise, not knowing it was some really beaten up engine trying to start. And so the moral of the story, or the question for everybody out there is, when should you help people? When should you not? Well, I just want to share my answer. I'm telling you what to think now. And it's basically, it comes from, dare I say, Shaolin. It's like a traditional Chinese martial art principle, which must come from elsewhere, and that's above my pay grade right now. But it's like, you should be polite, and you should be helpful, and you should be kind to people, because the world that we want to live in is a world that has helpful and kind and nice people and polite people. And on top of that, that is also, for the Shaolin warrior, how they expose evil. So you go and help the bandits, and they turn out to be bandits, and then you beat the heck out of them. Not that I'm suggesting that I would have given those guys a run for their money, but you get my point. So, yeah. So I was happy knowing that I did the right thing according to, traditional values that do make moral sense. Now, God forbid I get into any trouble being helpful in the future. And that is my story. My story of the week. All right, that's Ernie crunching and munching away in the background. He can't believe his luck getting a treat this early in the morning. He just had breakfast. Right, I'm just going to get this story organized. One moment. So yeah, that moral of the story is you got to be polite and nice, and also stick up for the right thing. Be brave enough to do both. Okay. The Three Clever Kings by Mary de Morgan, who was born in 1850 and died in 1907. And it's from her anthology, The Necklace of Princess Fiorimonde. Oh. All right. So this is actually quite long. This is going to run about 25 minutes, so buckle up, settle in, tune in, or go do something else. I don't know. It's a really good story. Old King Roland lay upon his deathbed, and as he had no son to reign after him, he sent for his three nephews, Aldevrand, Aldebert, and Alderet. And that's all of them. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's read seriously now. And addressed them as follows. My dear nephews, I feel that my days are now drawing to an end, and one of you will have to be king when I am dead. But there is no pleasure in being king. My people have been difficult to govern and never content with what I did for them, so that my life has been a hard one. And though I have watched you all closely, still I know not which is most fit to wear the crown. So my wish is that you should each try it in turn. You, Aldevrand, as you are the oldest, shall be king first, and if you reign happily, all well and good. But if you fail, let Aldebert take your place. And if he fails, let him give it up to Alderet. And then you'll know which is the best fitted to govern. On this, the three young men all thanked their uncle, and each one declared that he would do his best. And soon after, old King Roland died, and was buried with great state and ceremony. Now, Aldevrand was to be king, and he was crowned, and there were great rejoicings everywhere. "'Tis a fine thing to be king," cried he in much glee. "Now I can amuse myself and do just as I please, and there will be no one to stop me. and I will lie in bed as late as I like in the morning, for who dares blame one if one is king? Next morning, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor came to the palace to see the new king and settle affairs of the state. But they were told that His Majesty was in bed and had given orders that no one should disturb him. "This is a bad beginning," sighed the Prime Minister. "Very bad," echoed the Chancellor. When they came back to the palace later in the day, the king was playing at battledore and shuttlecock with some of his gentlemen, and was very angry at being interrupted in his game. "A pretty thing," he cried, "that I, the king, am to be sent for hither and thither, as if I were a lackey. They must go away and come another time." And on hearing this, the Prime Minister and Chancellor looked graver still. But next morning, there came the Commander-in-Chief and the Lord High Admiral, as well as the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, all wanting to have an audience with the king. And as he was not out of bed and they could not wait any longer, they all stood outside his bedroom door and knocked to gain admittance. And at last he came out in a towering rage, and throwing them his crown, cried, "Here, let one of my cousins be king, for I will not bear this longer. It is much more trouble than it is worth. So Aldebert or Alderete may try it and see how they like it. But as for me, I have had enough of it." And he ran downstairs and out of the palace door, leaving the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and the General and the Admiral staring at each other in dismay. Alderweireld walked out of the town unnoticed and turned toward the country, whistling cheerily to himself. When he had gone some way in the fields, he came to a farmhouse, and in a meadow near, the farmer stood talking to his men. Alderweireld went straight up to him, and touching his hat, asked if he could give him any work. "Work?" cried the farmer, little thinking he was talking to his late king. "Why, what sort of work can you do?" "Well," said Alderweireld, "I'm not very fond of running about, but if you want anyone to mind your sheep or keep the birds from your corn, I could do that nicely." "I tell you what you can do if you like," said the farmer. "I am wanting a goose boy to take care of my geese. See, there they are on the common. All you will have to do is to see that they don't stray away, and to drive them in at night." "That will suit me exactly," cried Alderweireld. "I will begin at once." And he went straight on to the common, and when he had collected the geese together, lay down to watch them in high good humour. "This is capital," he cried, "and much better than being king at the palace. Here there is no Prime Minister or Chancellor to come worrying." And he lay watching the geese all day very contentedly. When the Prime Minister and the Chancellor knew that Alderweireld was really gone, they went in a great hurry to Aldebert to tell him that it was his turn to be king. But when he heard how his cousin had run away, he looked frightened. "I will do my best," he said, "but I really know very little about the matter. However, you must tell me, and I will do whatever you direct." At hearing this, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were delighted. "Now we have got the right sort of king," they said, and both wagged their heads with joy. So King Aldebert was crowned, and there were great rejoicings all over the country. Early next morning he was up all ready to receive his ministers, and first came the Prime Minister. "Your Majesty," said he, "I come to you on an affair of much importance. A great part of our city is falling down, and it is very necessary that we should rebuild it at once, if you will command it. Therefore, I will see that it is done." "I have no doubt you are right," said the king. "Pray let them begin building at once." And the Prime Minister went away delighted. Scarcely had he gone when in came the Commander-in-Chief. "Your Majesty," said he, "I wish to lay before you the state of our army. our soldiers have had a great deal of fighting to do lately, and are beginning to be discontented. But the late king, your uncle, would never attend to their wants. Pray do what you like, said King Aldebert. To satisfy them, said the commander-in-chief, I think we should double their pay. This would keep them in a good humour, and all will go well. By all means, that will certainly be the best way, said Aldebert. Let it be given to them at once. And on hearing this, the commander-in-chief went away right merrily. When he had gone, there came in the Chancellor with a long face. Your Majesty, he said, I have this morning been to the treasury, and I find that there is scarcely any money left. The late king, your uncle, spent so much, in spite of all I could say, that now it is almost gone. Your Majesty must now save all you can for the next year or two, and you ought also to lower the soldiers' pay and stop all public works. I have no doubt you are quite right, cried the king. You know best. Let it be done as you wish. But next morning in came the Prime Minister with a frowning face. How is this, Your Majesty? Cried he. Just as we are beginning our buildings, the Chancellor comes and tells us that we are not to have any money to build with. He had not done speaking when the Commander-in-Chief burst into the room, unable to conceal his rage. Yesterday, Your Majesty told me that all soldiers should have double pay, and this morning I hear that instead of that, their wages are to be lowered. Here he was interrupted by the Chancellor, who came running in, looking much excited. Your Majesty, he cried, did you not yesterday say we were now to begin saving, and that I was not to allow any more money to be spent, and that the army must do with less pay? And then all three began to quarrel among themselves. When he saw how angry they were, King Aldebert took off his crown and said, I am sure you are each of you quite right, but I think I am scarcely fit to be a king. Indeed, I think you had better find my cousin Alderet and let him be crowned, and I will seek my fortune elsewhere. And he had slipped out of the room and run downstairs and out of the palace before they could stop him. He went briskly down the high road into the country, the same way that Otherworld had gone. After he had gone some way, he met a travelling tinker, who sat by the roadside mending tin cans, with his little fire at his side. Aldebert stood watching him, and at last said, How cleverly you mend those holes! You must lead a pleasant life, going from house to house in the green lanes, mending wares. Do you think I could learn how to do it if you would teach me? The tinker, who was an old man, looked at him and said, Well, I don't mind giving you a trial if you like to come with me, for I want a strong young man sometimes to help me wheel my little cart, and I'll teach you my trade, and we'll see what you can make of it. So Aldebert was delighted and went with the tinker. When they knew he was really gone, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor looked at each other in dismay. This will never do, cried they. We must go at once to Prince Alderet, and let us hope he may do better than his cousins. When Prince Alderet heard that it was his turn to reign, he jumped for joy. Now, cried he, at last I will show what a king should really be like. My cousins were neither of them any good, but they shall now see how different I will be. So he was crowned, and again there were great rejoicings all over the country. Next day he sat in state to receive the Chancellor and Prime Minister, and hear what they had to say. My friends, said he to them, a good king ought to be like a father to his people. And this is what I mean to be. I mean to arrange everything for them myself, and if they will only obey me and do as I direct, they are sure to be both prosperous and happy. On hearing this, both Prime Minister and Chancellor looked anxious, and the Chancellor said, I fear, Your Majesty, your people will not like to be too much meddled with. At this the king was very angry and bid them to see about their own business and not presume to teach him his. When they had gone, he went to take a drive in his city, that he might see it and know it well. But directly he returned to the palace, he sent for the Prime Minister, and when he had arrived said, I already see much to be altered in my kingdom. I do not like the houses in which many of the people dwell, nor indeed the dresses they wear. But what strikes me most of all is that whenever I go I smell a strong smell of pea soup. Now nothing is so unwholesome as pea soup, and therefore it would not be right in me to allow the people to go on eating it. I command, therefore, that no one shall again make or eat pea soup within my realm on pain of death. Again the Prime Minister looked very grave and began to say, Your Majesty, your subjects will surely not like to be hindered from eating and drinking what pleases them. But the king cried out in rage, Go at once and do as I bid you. So the Prime Minister had to obey. Early next morning, when the king arose, he heard a great hubbub under his window, and when he went to see what it was, he saw a vast mob of people all shouting, The king! The king! Where is this king who would dictate to us what we shall eat and drink? When he saw them, he was terribly frightened, and at once sent off for the Prime Minister and Chancellor to come to his aid. Pray go and tell them what to eat. Pray go and tell them to eat what they like, he cried when they arrived. But, do you know, I find it will not at all suit me to be king. You had best try Otherworld or Leadbeater again. And so saying, he took off his crown and laid it down, and slipped away out of the palace before either Prime Minister or Chancellor could stop him. He went out of the back door and ran and ran and ran till he had left the town far behind, and came to the country fields and lanes, the same way that his two cousins had gone, and as he went he met a sweep trudging along carrying his long brooms over his shoulder. My friend, cried Alderete, stopping him, of all things in the world I should like to be a sweep and learn how to sweep chimneys. May I go with you? And will you teach me your trade? The sweep looked surprised, but said yes, Alderete could go with him if he chose, and he was now going on to the farmhouses on the road to sweep the chimneys. He could begin at once. Not sure why the chimney sweep is talking in the third person there, but that's okay. So Alderete went with the sweep, carrying some of his brooms for him. After a time, the people outside the palace grew quiet when they heard the king would not interfere with them further. And when all was again still, the Prime Minister and Chancellor went to seek the king, but he was nowhere to be found in the palace. This will never do, cried they. We must have a king somehow. So we had best have back one of the others. So they started to look for Otherworld or Leadbeater. They sought them all over the city, and at last they came into the same country road down which the three cousins had gone. And there they saw Otherworld lying in a meadow, watching his flock of geese. Good day, my friends, cried he when he saw them. And how are things going on at the palace? I hope my cousins like reigning better than I did. Now here I lie peacefully all day long and watch my geese, and it is much nicer than being king. Then the Prime Minister and Chancellor told him all that had happened, and begged that he would come back with them to the palace again. But at this Otherworld laughed outright. No, indeed, cried he. I would not be king again for any man living. You had best go and seek my cousin Leadbeater and ask him. I saw him go down the road with a tinker, helping him to mend his tins. So go and ask him, and leave me to mind my geese in peace. So the Prime Minister and the Chancellor had to seek still farther. They trudged on till at last they met Leadbeater, who sat by the side of the road, mending a tin kettle and whistling cheerily. "Heyday! Whom have we here?" cried he. "The Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and I am right glad to see you both. See how clever I have grown. I am learning to be a tinker, and I mended that hole all myself." Then the Prime Minister and Chancellor begged him to leave his pots, and came back to the palace and be king. But he fell to work again, harder than ever, and said, "No, indeed. Go and ask my cousins, who are both much cleverer than I. I really don't do for it at all, but I make a very good tinker, and I like that much better." "Then what can we do?" cried the Prime Minister, "for we don't know where Alderete has gone." "I saw him go by here with a sweep a little time ago," said Alderbert, "and he went into that farmhouse yonder, so you had best seek him there." So the Prime Minister and the Chancellor went on to the farmhouse. At the door stood the farmer's wife, but when they asked her if she had seen the king go by, she stared with surprise. "Nay," said she, "no one has been here but our sweep and his apprentice. He is in there sweeping the chimney now." On hearing this, the Prime Minister and Chancellor at once ran into the farmhouse and saw the old sweep standing by the kitchen fireplace. "And where is the other sweep?" cried they. "He has gone up the chimney and is just going to begin sweeping," said the old man. "So if you want to speak to him, you must shout." So they shouted and called, "King Alderete! King Alderete!" as loud as ever they could, but he did not hear. Then the Chancellor knelt in front of the grate and put his head up the chimney and called, "King Alderete! King Alderete! It is the Prime Minister and I, the Chancellor, come to fetch your Majesty back to the palace." When Alderete heard him up the chimney, he trembled in every limb, but he replied, "I am not going to come down. I don't want to be king. I am going to be a sweep, and I like that much better. I shan't come down till you are gone away, and now you had best go quickly, for I am going to begin sweeping, and all the soot will fall on your head." Then they heard the rattle of the broom in the chimney, and a whole shower of soot fell on the Chancellor's head. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor turned back to the city very disconsolately. "We must go and look for a king elsewhere," they said. "It is no use troubling about Alderand, Alderbert, and Alderete." So they left the one to his geese, and one to his tins, and the other to sweep chimneys, and that was the end of the 3 clever kings. All right. Now, that story... well, I'm going to tell you the moral of the story as written by Wikipedia. I mean, okay, we're all grown up, so we kind of get the idea of the moral of the story, and it's really good, right? This is a fantastic story, in my opinion. Wikipedia's moral of this story is wealth, power, and luxuries are not key to one's happiness. Instead, pursue a career that fits one's interest, and happiness will follow. Well, yeah, I mean, yes, no. It is a little bit, it's a little bit open to interpretation, but not really. But I think that's kind of right. But Alderand, Aldebert, and Alderete discovered they didn't like doing what they're doing, and they used the power of the magic word, no, and they stood their ground. And, doing something they didn't like doing made them think about what they did want to do. And then they found what they were humble enough and self-reflective enough to find what they actually did really want to do with their life. And they were happy with that. And then when they're getting pestered by all these politicians and stuff, they were like, absolutely not. And they stood firm and held their ground. And on top of that, there are a lot of sort of, meanings in this. Look what the children did. They basically dissolved the kingdom. I mean, we don't know what happened after, but all these people that believed in this authority, Prime Minister and all that, they were basically addicted to the whole concept. And the kids came along and they just could not understand the concept. And in a way, all of them kind of had a pretty good go of it. Especially the one that just wanted well for everybody. Well, it didn't turn out right, did it? And they discovered it just is not a thing. So there is a, kind of like an, anti-royal, anti-government kind of theme in here. A pro-freedom thing, individual theme that's in the story. And for those out there that know that understand, which is all of you guys, right? That government is not cool and all that sort of thing, and that freedom is important. Freedom's the way to go. This is a great story to read to kids if you have those values and those morals under your belt. I mean, this really is like a natural law story, right? The lesson really is the what's the Freemasonic thing? The 2 pillars of Freemasonry, right? That essentially do no harm and take no shit. So don't harm others. That feminine care, and then the masculine action to stick up and defend that. And that's what these guys actually did, because they were they felt like they were being harmed, sort of coerced into this position of king. And actually think about, like, okay, it's just a fairy tale, right? But imagine the pressure of being a king, and you're brought up into that, and that's the religion or the belief system, right? Think of the pressure that these kids had. So it would have taken a tremendous amount of self-belief to say no and push away all these adults, trying to keep them in the system. So they broke out of the matrix, man. They really did. And kids will naturally dissolve the state or the concept of that in their later years if adults just revere them, promote their free will, and respect their right to say no. It's as simple as that. That's how we break this cycle that we're in. And I just want to read something from, which is part of this segment. Oh my gosh, I'm already running out of time, big time. The author Jan Beveridge, in her book, Children into Swans, Fairy Tales and the Pagan Imagination. I'm just going to read a little paragraph from that. Although Ireland is unique in Europe for its long tradition of oral and written stories, most countries of the world have a heritage of tales that have been passed down generation by generation as an oral tradition. And thousands of fairy tales have drawn upon these for inspiration. Until the 19th century, folk stories were not regarded seriously by academics. They seemed simply a part of rural peasant life with little intrinsic worth. Yet, they were an integral part of rural life. Storytellers entertained at weddings and christenings, at community celebrations, and at simple gatherings of families and friends when the outdoor work was done. Grandmothers told stories to children, and in this way, folk tales were passed on as a spoken legacy, preserving the memory of a common heritage. And, reflecting on this position that story had in our past and how important it was and how such a big part of society it was, that's the point of why I'm reading a fairy tale, and we're going to explore them on the show, is that in my experience, it's just, that the forces that we can't see that are here to help us or that we can utilize to help us absolutely love the dynamic of reading fairy tales as described in that paragraph, like the morals and, the spoken legacies, the memories of the common heritage. the fairies and the angels absolutely love, it's like a magnet for that kind of help. And that's just me speaking anecdotally. And then this show is, trying to get the facts on that. So that's the whole point of this. So, an adult reading a fairy tale, especially one like this, and if you understand the allegory and like the deeper meaning, or if you can extract that and connect that to some of your values and see that that's important, reading that to kids is it really is powerful. Rudolf Steiner talked essentially about that, where you're transferring the thing you actually want to educate the kid about. You're transferring that into their mind through the allegory and through your knowing. So obviously the principle is that the parents should be moral and understand the difference between right or wrong for the kids to know it right. But to teach that, one of the ways to teach that is through allegorical stories, fairy tales that have the meaning and the moral that you understand and you see in the story and that you want to pass on to the children. That's how actual education really works, as far as I'm concerned. And it's another point of me exploring the fairy tales here today. And just to go a little bit further into that, Varg Vikernes, I'm not pronouncing that correct, I don't think, and Marie Cachet, well, Varg Vikernes the man in that black metal band, Besan, I think. Oh no. Well, he was the one that murdered one of his quote-unquote friends. We're not here to talk about that. I'm sure you all know about that story too. But anyway, he's done a lot of work on paganism, which was sort of the whole point of their story anyway. But recently he's written books on paganism and explored fairy tales, and explored them has he what? And I just want to say that in his book, Paganism Explained, which he co-wrote with Marie Cachet, they talk about Little Red Riding Hood, and just as an example, they explain the symbolism of each character in Little Red Riding Hood, and Varg Vikernes breaks down how that each of the characters, just everything in the book, represents parts of the reproductive system. And the story is a theme of biological fertilization. And deeper still, which is what they say that the story of Little Red Riding Hood represents, is the reincarnation of the ancestor, in the 7-year-old child. Now, a 7-year-old child, a child at 7 years is when they come online, when they become the individual, when their brain becomes self-realized. And that's when they come online, which is also when their new set of teeth come through, the weaned child, right? So the point of my story is just to imagine that these stories, especially Little Red Riding Hood, is a really, really, really old story. To imagine where it came from, and to imagine the thoughts of the understanding of, the spiritual sciences, right? Of the people that wrote these stories and led them and told them that they understood the concept of the reincarnation of the ancestor into the life of the human being. They understood the symbolism of it. They understood the correspondence between the reincarnation of the ancestor and the weaned child with biological fertilization and reproduction. And not only that, they knew all the symbols of that, all the things in the visible world that would symbolize those things. And then they were able to turn that into a story. I mean, how meta is that? It is just out of control, guys. Oh my goodness. So I don't know I don't even know a fraction of this stuff. And this is part of the exploration. And there's the word they use in the book Paganism Explained, maieutic. Maieutic is relating to or resembling the Socratic method of eliciting new ideas from another. A teacher who uses maieutic methods can be thought of as an intellectual midwife who assists the students in bringing forth ideas and conceptions previously latent in their minds. And the Rosicrucians think that believe, or at least talk about, because I know it to be true, talk about those ideas being able to be brought forth in the third stage of development, the 14 to 21, that those conceptions, those ideas being able to be brought forth better then when, say, for example, something like Little Red Riding Hood was read to them when they were children by someone that understood the symbolism and the allegory deeply of the actual story. Does that make sense? So that is the magic and the power of the fairy tales. And the fairies and the angels, just to quantify those archetypal energies, to say it kind of, more scientifically, love this. They want us to just get involved with this. And it's a big deal. And that's the end of that. All right. So my dog, Ernie, just finished his treat. And he just knocked all my gear on the floor. And I can't even believe this is working, if it even is working. Oh, I see you're still there. Thank you, Comet. Yeah, it's the first time my doggy's done that. He wasn't getting any attention from me, and it's just a different morning. My partner, she's away, so I have to put him with me, and yada yada yada. Yeah, hope he didn't get a shock. No, it was luckily no. Well, he got a shock from me. No, it was all all away from the plug. It was all my audio gear. So where my mic goes, where everything, he just he just pulled it all down. Poor guy, but he had a lovely treat. So he's spoiled. And we're lucky. He's just a super nice dog. And apologies for that. And I'm surprised that we're back up and running. So we got 10 minutes left. Weirdly, it sounds different. So I don't know what. I don't know. Maybe it sounds better. It's the magic of my dog. Right, traveling companions. Just a little reading that I did, and we'll have a little look at that and break that down. Here we go. If you want to start a new phase of your life, be selfish and unsympathetic. Set about your changes quietly and in solitude. Self-deception is the key to success. Make a plan and engage with it. Trust and have faith that things will get better. Nurture the new phase to its full potential. Be patient, resilient, and persevere. Take time to reflect on the choices you have made to get a greater understanding of your values. Move away from things and people that are not healthy for you. Move on to something better. All right. To start a new phase, be selfish and unsympathetic. Well, yeah, I think that's okay. This is all easier said than done, right? Starting a new phase of your life, be selfish and unsympathetic. Yeah, that is the tough thing. Like people, we get stuck in ways and we want to change them. And I think it really does just come down to you just got to really care about yourself. If you really want to make the change, you have to be like, well, sorry, everybody. But what is that new phase? You got to have a goal. And is that goal for your own good and the greater good? Then yeah, you've really got to be selfish and unsympathetic. I think being sympathetic and selfless when you want to make a change is really not helpful. So that's just a little reminder for us. Set about your changes quietly and in solitude. Well, that's starting to be that bro-entrepreneurship thing, right? The grind. Grind quietly in silence. Self-deception is the key to success. Well, that brings to mind Joe Dispenza and his work, where you literally, it's like the fake it till you make it, but really you fake it that you've already made it. So you start thinking that you are already the success, or you already are in this new phase. You explore how it might feel to be in that new phase of your life. And there we go. Make a plan and engage with it. Absolutely. Trust and have faith that things will get better. Well, for me, as I've been trying to do this myself, I mean, this is really very personal, this reading, as I try to do that myself, I realize how, addicted I am to being pessimistic and, not trusting that things will get better because, people are such a-holes and all that sort of thing. And then it's hard to deny that because you see that to be true out there in reality. And being patient, resilient, and persevere, and then persevering with it. Those old brain patterns want to keep coming back. So there's no real answer to that. That's just try. Keep trying, and things do get better. All right, how are we for time? 9 minutes. Okay, I think that's about it. What? Move on to something. Move away from things and people that are not healthy for you. Another real tough one. What if it's your family? You got to weigh it up against what you want to achieve. Because also, if you want to do something, start a new phase of your life, and it's for your own good and for good of other people, well, no one should be actually trying to get in the way of that and trying to stop you. Even if it is people in your family, they're not really family members, are they? If they're not, people should just be like, wow, good on you, I support you wholeheartedly in that. That's it. Why would anyone not let you or not want to let you? Easier said than done. We've got to move away from those people. And that might mean having no mates. Oh, I don't know how I can make it the next 8 minutes with my puppy Ernie. He's been quiet, which is pretty good, but oh man, I've bitten off more than I can chew, mate? All right, hive mind. It's where we're going to talk about, which we already just did, really, the power of thought. And eventually, this segment, it would be great to work on something with you out there. And we can all put our mind to something, if only for a minute. But we're going to keep exploring this power of thought. And right, so I'll just read a little bit from Thought Forms by C.W. Leadbeater. And I think it was Annie Besant, published in 1901 by the Theosophical Publishing House. And that book is really cool. Pretty sure you can get that from, I don't know if I should even say Anna's Archive. Check out Anna's Archive. Or just type that in. I'm pretty sure like the Theosophical Society is pretty cool about books being disseminated, right? So, and that book is really cool. It's got images of the thoughts drawn by clairvoyants. But anyway, let me just read this. In cases in which good or evil thoughts are projected at individuals, those thoughts, if they are to directly fulfill their mission, must find in the aura of the object to whom they are sent materials capable of responding sympathetically to their vibrations. Any combination of matter can only vibrate within certain definite limits, and if the thought form be outside all the limits within which the aura is capable of vibrating, it cannot affect that aura at all. it consequently rebounds from it, and that with a force proportionate to the energy with which it impinged upon it. This is why it is said that a pure heart and mind are the best protectors against any inimical assaults. For such a pure heart and mind will construct an astral and mental body of fine and subtle materials, and these bodies cannot respond to vibrations that demand coarse and dense matter. If an evil thought, projected with malefic intent, strikes such a body, it can only rebound from it, and it is flung back with all its own energy. It then flies backward along the magnetic line of least resistance, that which it has just traversed, and strikes its projector. He, having matter in his astral and mental bodies similar to that of the thought form he generated, is thrown into respondent vibrations and suffers the destructive effects he had intended to cause to another. Thus, curses and blessings come home to roost. From this arise also the serious effects of hating or suspecting a good and highly advanced man. The thought forms sent against him cannot injure him, and they rebound against their projectors, shattering them mentally, morally, or physically. Such instances are well known to members of the Theosophical Society, having come under their direct observation. So long as any of the coarser kinds of matter connected with evil and selfish thoughts remain in a person's body, he is open to attack from those who wish him evil. But when he has perfectly eliminated these by self-purification, his haters cannot injure him, and he goes on calmly and peacefully amid all the darts of their malice. But it is bad for those who shoot out such darts. And we've run out of time. I wanted to talk a little bit about UFC, funnily enough, and connecting it to that. Just how people think of people and how people behave with one another in this day and age. We're in a very combative time, a very polarizing time, and a very divisive time. And think about what thoughts are behind all that from all these people. So we're going to explore this more in this show, and I'm kind of being selfish, but I hope anyone listening is interested in this stuff too. And we can get into it, explore it. And my dog is just bouncing off the walls now. This is out of control, but we're at the end of the show. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Conversations with Eagle Flower up next. All the best, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Take care.